Thank you for joining the RTC's Transportation Access Advisory Committee meeting. Madam Chair Jean Payton, staff is ready for you to begin.
Thank you, Reagan, and welcome to everyone. This is Jean Payton for the record. Today we are having our May 26, 2021 Transportation Access Advisory Committee meeting. Before we begin, Reagan will do a roll call, introduce staff members that are on the phone, and do a few housekeeping details. So Reagan, are you ready?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Reagan Lively, Management Analyst for the RTC for the record. I will be calling your name in alphabetical order. Please confirm your attendance as I read your name. Nancy Brune.
Present.
Evander Davis.
Present.
Raymond Fletcher.
Present.
Janai Gassion.
Present.
Dan Hyde.
Present.
Beth E. Logan.
Present.
Christine Moninghoff.
Present.
Chuck Newhoner.
Present.
Jean Payton.
Present.
And Amanda Shipp.
Present.
Thank you. Also, please note that we have several RTC staff on the line for today's meeting. This includes Dan Howland, Director of Paratransit and Specialized Services, Sherwin Gutierrez, Director of Finance, Tanya Pagano, Quality Assurance Supervisor, Kenny Rodriguez, Manager of Customer Care, Robert Palumbo, Safety and Security Compliance Supervisor, Karen Rickerson, Senior Management Analyst, Nathan Goldberg, Manager of Transit Planning, and Sue Christensen, Engagement and Media Supervisor. As the chair mentioned, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. When the chair asks for comments from the committee or calls for a vote, please remember to unmute yourself before speaking. Remember to state your name for the record before providing comment. Be sure to mute your line if you are not speaking. Voting will be done verbally. The chair will call for ayes and nays. If there are no nays, then the motion will carry. If there are nays, then a roll call vote will be required. In the event of a roll call vote, please wait for your name to be read to provide your vote. The chair will call for any comments or question after an item has been presented. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Reagan. Before we start the first item on our agenda, which is public comment, Dan Howland will just give us a quick update on the changes to the public comment period. So Dan?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Dan Howland, for the record, Director of Paratransit and Specialized Services. As you know, on March 22nd, 2020, the State of Nevada Executive Department issued Declaration of Emergency Directive 006, which suspended the requirement to have a physical location for public meetings. Pursuant to Directive 006 and for the health and safety of the community, this meeting is being held telephonically. Before we begin public comments, I would like to announce to members of the public watching this meeting remotely, the RTC is accepting public comments during the meeting for both agenda item number 9, Community Mobility Program, and agenda item number 10, Proposed Transit Service Changes. To allow for comments, the public may submit via email at publiccomments@rtcsnv.com. Comments can be submitted to be read aloud or to be added directly to the written record. Additionally, comments or questions may be submitted on the comment section of the YouTube live stream of this meeting. For the first citizens participation period, Ms. Reagan Lively will read the public comments received by the RTC. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dan. So this is the first session of the public comment, and this is an opportunity for people to speak to any issue that is on today's agenda, and particularly to make comments not only now, but later on items 9 and 10, as Dan just mentioned. The comments can be emailed, done on the RTC website, or hooked to the YouTube presentation today. What will happen is that Reagan will read the first 500 words of any comment. However, the entire comment will be posted with the minutes of this meeting. So those are kind of the rules. Reagan, do we have any comments at this point?
Thank you, Chairwoman Payton. Reagan Lively, Management Analyst, again for the record. There are no public comments at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. So then we'll go on with the meeting. Item number 2 is the approval of the minutes of the March 24th, 2021 meeting. I'll entertain the motion to approve.
Madam Chair, this is Dan Hyde. I move to approve the minutes of March 24th, 2021 as submitted.
Thank you, Dan. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as they were submitted? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Say nay. Okay, those are approved then. Thank you. Items 3 and 4 are the consent agenda. And what I would like to do is ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, this is Dan Hyde again. So moved.
Thank you, Dan. Before we vote on this, if there is anything in item 3 or 4 that you would like to bring to the floor for discussion, we would need to remove it from the consent agenda. Does anyone have an item that they would like to remove from the consent agenda and discuss it today? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. All right, that passes as well. Item 5 is an update on the My RTC paratransit pilot program, and that would be provided by Tanya Pagnano. So Tanya, are you ready?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Tanya Pagano, Quality Assurance Supervisor for the record. At the time of the last My RTC Parapilot Program update in March, we had identified our initial group of pilot participants and were preparing to launch the pilot program. With the intent of beginning small and slowly adding additional participants, we reached out to our initial group of 5 participants on April 2nd and provided them with the onboarding information so that they were ready to begin using the system to book rides starting on April 5th. During that first week of the pilot, we did encounter some system issues. The first being participants were prevented from booking rides due to the system mistakenly flagging any address that was entered as being outside of our paratransit service area. That issue was immediately reported to the developer, who quickly put a workaround in place, and to date, we have not again experienced that problem. The second was some customers were unable to book rides, particularly those rides that would occur during peak times due to the social distancing parameters that were in place. These rides were still able to be booked, but required a call to customer care rather than being able to use the system. Some changes were made to the social distancing parameters in our booking system, and that decreased the number of rides that would necessitate that call to customer care. Since resolving these issues during week 2, we have continued to reach out to additional customers and to date have onboarded 20 clients who have successfully booked a total of 384 rides using My RTC Para. Sorry, Reagan, that was on the first slide. Can you go? Thank you. The feedback that we have received so far has been overwhelmingly positive. The feature for which we have received the most positive feedback is the ability to book a ride to any address that's inside our paratransit service area. This is in comparison to the current ride check system, which limits customers to booking between 10 frequent addresses. And we've also received quite a bit of feedback on the tracking feature, which shows the vehicle on a map for an imminent ride and gives an estimated arrival time. Next slide, please. Just to quickly cover next steps, for the web component, the developer is working on a permanent fix for the problem involving the addresses that we're showing outside the paratransit service area. We want to make sure that that permanent fix is in place before making the product available to a larger customer base, so going outside of the pilot. The projected completion for that fix is early June. In the meantime, we're working with our Government Affairs Department on FAQs and tutorials that will be available to customers via our website once the product is fully launched, as well as the marketing materials that will be used for advertising the new product. In terms of the app component, we're working with the developer on completion and are hoping to begin our internal testing in June. And then once that testing is complete, to begin allowing the pilot participants access to the app to ensure it is working as expected and get their feedback before we make it available to a wider customer base. And that is the end of my prepared presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Tanya?
Yeah, Madam Chair, it's Beth Ilagan.
Yes, Beth.
Okay, my question is, so I know it's not fixed yet. They're still going to do another pilot. But once it's all set up and ready, to whom will this be available? Is it going to be available to everyone that's now having the RTC, ridership, or are there specific target, people that would only avail of this product?
So once the pilot is complete, it will be available to any certified paratransit rider to book anywhere inside the service area. It will be in two phases. So the web portion will be available and ready first, and then the app component will follow.
I see. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Evander Davis for the record.
Yes,
I have
Evander.
been using the program, been on the pilot program, and I just want to say what a wonderful thing it is, and that you guys are doing great, and keep up the good work.
Thank you for that feedback.
That is good to hear. Thanks, Evander. Anyone else? Okay, well, maybe at our July meeting, we'll be up and running and past just the pilot, huh? That would be cool.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much, Tanya.
Thank you.
Item number 6 on our agenda is to receive additional information regarding the financial update for the first quarter of fiscal year 2021, and that will be given by Sherwin Gutierrez. Sherwin, are you ready?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Sherwin Gutierrez, Director of Finance, for the record. In our last meeting, there were questions that were asked regarding our first quarter information. So one of the questions was, what is the current percentage in relation to your budget? We're talking about salaries. What is the percentage of salaries in comparison to our total budget? And that answer is 5.8% of our total budget of 748.6 million. So that's for fiscal year 2021. And I believe Vice Chair Dan Hyde asked that question last time. So I don't know if there's a follow-up on that one. Sorry. And then another question also that was asked during the last meeting, is there an updated cost per ride for paratransit that is different from what we currently have? In fiscal year 2019, we provided the information of $33 per ride. For fiscal year 20, it went up to $40 per ride, and that's a bit of an anomaly due to the pandemic, where we have to provide some social distancing, and we have to provide more service to with less individuals inside the vehicles. So we're hoping once the anomaly is gone after the pandemic, it will be in that same range as well, between $30 to $33 as we had for the past few years. So another question that was asked during the last meeting was, do you have any data on the paratransit use since the pandemic? Has it been reduced, and how much in percentage? So yes, so we have the data now. So for fiscal year 21 or fiscal year 2020, sorry, during that period, from March to June, we saw ridership decline of about 55.8%. So, which was really significant during the pandemic. Um, from July to January of this year, we saw ridership decline at about 45%. So yeah, it's we're that's the data that we have as of January of 2021. That's all the questions that we have for last time, Chair Payton. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Sherwin? All right, hearing none. Thank you for coming back with the answers to those questions. And I guess we'll hear from you in July about the second quarter, at least a preliminary thing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, number 7 is a presentation on the collaboration between the Regional Transportation Commission and the Health District of Southern Nevada in providing transportation to and from vaccination appointments. And that is going to be given by Kenny Rodriguez. Kenny?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kenny Rodriguez, Manager of Customer Care for the record. So I'm here to discuss the assistance that the RTC has provided to get more people in the community vaccinated. The RTC partnered with the Southern Nevada Health District to offer transportation to COVID-19 vaccination sites to some of the most vulnerable population. Since March 4th, we have accommodated 25 socially distanced group rides using our fixed route vehicles. The Health District was working with community organizations and senior living facilities to organize a pickup location for this service. The RTC then provides transportation to and from the vaccine site where the passengers were vaccinated on board the vehicle. Also, a partnership with the Health District, we created what we called the Vaccination Transportation Assistance Program to provide round trips to individuals who needed transportation to get to their vaccination door to door. So how it worked is the individuals were able to call up the program's phone number to schedule a ride. We were booking out 2 weeks to get these rides accommodated. The RTC would pick up and drop off the individual from their door and back home. Like fixed routes, the people who were utilizing this service were vaccinated on board the vehicle, not requiring to get off. We started this program March 23rd and have provided approximately 30 rides. The program ended on April 28th. On March 26th, the RTC announced it will offer free paratransit rides to get vaccinated to offer vaccination rides for its paratransit customers. So far, we've scheduled more than 550 trips for this. We should also mention that the Southern Nevada Health District vaccination sites are accessible via fixed route. In fact, we have an interactive map so our riders can know which routes to use to get to those locations. They can visit rtcsnv.com/coronavirus for more information. Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Kenny? You know, once again, it's just a nice thing to see these kinds of collaborations that really work so well for the public. Thank you, Kenny, for reporting on this to us.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. We have item number 7, which is an update on the community relations transit team, and that will be given by Robert Palumbo. So Robert, are you ready?
Madam Chair, Robert Palumbo, Safety and Security Compliance Supervisor for the record. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're doing fine.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yes, I'm going to give you the update on the CRT team. So I just want to give you the top priority of the RTC is to provide a safe and secure ride to work, the grocery store, medical appointments, and more on our transit system that runs 24/7. The new Community Relations Transit Team, or as we refer to them as CRTT, was launched in November of last year to help to do just that. Special teams of 2 security officers are assigned to each shift around the clock to interact with riders, provide customer service, and help provide a positive riding experience. If passengers need directions, want to report something they see suspicious, need help with the Ride RTC mobile app, or have trouble using the Transit Watch app, as well as currently with the mask mandates, if the passenger forgot a mask, these teams are out there to help passengers with their needs. The CRTT program is an innovative effort in public transit and is already proving valuable for riders, operators, and the officers themselves. In just a few short months since the program began, RTC has received positive feedback and has been shared with us through customer care agents on the Transit Watch app, and also we have received some social media comments as well. Additionally, the most recent RTC board meeting, Officer Wesley Franklin from the CRT team was recognized for his outstanding customer service and the many positive customer comments that he specifically has received. I'd like to show you guys a short video of Officer Braun and Lerma on their patrol to look at how these teams interact with the public.
I strongly feel that this program is going to change a lot of things here in the transit system, and for the better. That's what we're hoping for. CRTT stands for Community Relations Transit Team. Our goal is basically to reach out towards the community on the coaches, basically tell them what's the Transit Watch app, how it works, the RTC mobile app. We're just there to have them feel safe riding the bus. A bunch of them tell us that they like to see us on the coaches.
I'm really a helping person in general, so I figured working security is you do your job, you secure, make sure everyone's safe while they're riding, but this is more of a community thing. When they see someone actually caring for their problems or any issues they might have, because they go through a lot, you don't know who you're dealing with on the buses. Just talking to someone and having that chance where you can actually communicate with them can change the way their day goes.
We're just trying to be out there for the community.
And Madam Chair, this concludes my prepared presentation. I am here to answer any questions, should you have any.
Are there any questions?
Madam Chair, it's Beth Ilagan. I do have a
Yes,
question.
Beth.
Okay. My question is, where are these teams located? I mean, do they just move around from like one bus stop to the next? Or are they assigned specific bus stops? And the second question is, are they subcontracted? I saw the word, is it marksman or something? Are they a security subcontractor?
Location. Okay. So your first question regarding location, their locations are assigned by us, and those locations are driven from the customer comments we get, some of the feedback we get from other departments, whether it be fare evasions, also sleeper deployments, as far as if people are reported as sleeping at the stops. So there's a number of factors that go into those deployments. So to answer your question directly, yes, they are directed as far as their assignment locations. And the second question regarding the subcontractor, yes, our entire security force outside of the 5 people that we have in our department is subcontracted through a company called Marksman Security Corporation.
Okay, thank you.
Robert, on a given day, how many individuals, how many teams are out there on the street?
There are 2 teams on each shift. So there's four.
2. And if they're assigned, say they're on the strip at the first part of their shift, and do they stay on the strip the whole time, or can you move them around if you have needs other places?
If we have an immediate need for them to move around, say we get a report of something, yes, we have the ability to move them around as needed. Yes.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much, Robert. And
Madam
Yes.
Chair, this is Reagan Lively. I apologize to interrupt. It looked like Dan Hyde had something that he was trying to say, but the audio was coming through weird.
Oh, okay, Dan, you want to try that again?
Madam Chair, Dan Howland, for the record, maybe Mr. Hyde could text me or you the question and we could read it aloud when he's able to do that, and we could move on with the next item.
Okay, we can, Robert, will you be around if the question comes in so you can answer it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that would probably be the best.
Madam Chair.
Okay. Yes, Raymond.
All right, I heard Dan's question, and that's why I wasn't raising mine. I was waiting until he was done. My question is related to these community relations transit teams. Are they just on the strip, or are they in the neighborhoods as well?
Right now, they are on the strip as far as our deployments for the immediate weeks, but they have ridden routes in the residential areas as well. I guess it really depends on the deployment needs, and they do change quite frequently. So there isn't a location that they cannot go to, but currently, they are on the strip.
Okay, just hopefully in the future, as a resident, I believe it would be reassuring knowing that there was security on the bus in case an issue arose, as there have been plenty of issues in the past on our buses, unfortunately.
Robert, I'd like to follow up on Raymond's comment. Are there other security officers on other buses, or do we just have 4 each shift for the entire system?
There are route officers on other buses, route officers as well. Yes, there is.
Okay, good. Are there any other questions for Robert before we let him go? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Robert. And if we hear from Dan Hyde, we will let you know.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we have a program update. A program report on the project eligibility. Oh, I'm going to have to read this directly. Report on the program of projects eligible for fundings from the RTC's Community Mobility Program. Whew. And Karen Rickerson will be talking about that. So Karen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Karen Rickerson, Senior Management Analyst for the record. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Payton and board members, for allowing me to present the Community Mobility Project Award recommendations for fiscal year 22. Next slide, please. To be eligible to apply for the Community Mobility Project, also referred to as CMP, a provider must be classified as a 501c3 nonprofit organization that provides or will provide transportation service for seniors, individuals with disabilities, and or low-income residents. The CMP program is funded with local dollars, and the award recommendations for fiscal year 22 is $710,748. As of February 21, the current fiscal year 21 program provided match funding for just over 22,000 client trips at an average of $19.37 per trip. Next slide, please. The CMP, or Community Mobility Project, was created in fiscal year 19 to enhance resident quality of life, to bolster client self-sufficiencies within our community, and to encourage growth in transportation options offered through existing local programs. The program matches funding for 50% of eligible transportation operating expenses. This program term for fiscal year 22 will be from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. Next slide, please. The award recommendations for fiscal year 2021 are Capability Health and Human Services, $32,300. Helping Hands of Henderson, sponsored by Dignity Health, $92,100. Helping Hands of Vegas Valley, $251,963. $251,963. Jewish Family Services, $43,770. Lend a Hand to Boulder City, $44,600. Nevada Hand, $58,847. And Opportunity Village, $187,168. One of our new participants is Nevada Hand. They have direct contact with a large base of qualified riders who will benefit from the CMP program by connecting seniors and families living in affordable housing to education, health and wellness, financial stability, and community engagement opportunities. This concludes my presentation. Next slide, please. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Beth.
Yes, I was just a little bit confused. Okay, because earlier Mr. Gutierrez from Finance had mentioned that the cost for per person ridership is between like $33 to $40, but with this program, wherein other organizations provide transportation to the same, people that we provide to, like the seniors, disabled, and low income, it only costs about $19 per trip. So what's the difference? Is it because it's the 50-50 only percent that we provide, and they provide the other 50%, or is there really a big difference with the cost?
Yes, ma'am. Our cost is the $1937, which is a 50% match to what they're spending as well. So the cost is higher.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for clarifying.
Thank you.
Are there other questions for Karen?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Raymond.
Raymond Fletcher for the record. How are these recipients chosen? What is the process that they have to go through to get these awards?
Madam Chair, for the record, this is Antoinette Braddock, manager of RTC Paratransit, and I'm going to tag team with Karen a little bit to answer.
Okay.
If that's okay.
That'd be fine. Thank you, Antoinette.
Okay, thank you. So Raymond, the answer to your question is we every year, so it's an annual, as Karen said, it's a formal application process. So the primary qualifications are that the agencies are nonprofit organizations and that they provide services to either seniors, individuals with disabilities, folks that are low income, and what else? Oh, and veterans. And so if these organizations qualify for that, so they submit an application, those applications are reviewed by an evaluation committee and subsequently awarded. And this particular year, we were able to award funding to every organization that applied because they were all eligible, and we weren't able to give them 100% of their requested budget, but we were able to kind of disseminate the funds that we had available. But so essentially, eligibility is that they're seniors, individuals with disabilities, veterans, or low income. And most of them are a combination of all of those.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My apologies. There was a lot of background noise when they're doing the presentation. Another question right quick. Does any of this money come from the CARES Act, or is this just another subsidy? Thank you.
Yep, good question. So no, it does not come from the CARES Act. This is a small, and when I say small, it's actually very generous, but it's a small bucket of money that RTC C-suite team and boards allow for us to give to our community partners to do the good work that they do in the community. So it is locally funded. It is not federally funded.
I do have a question. Could you clarify the one that includes Dignity Health? What was the other part? It was at Helping Hands of Henderson?
That's correct. It's Helping Hands of Henderson, also known as Dignity Health, or Dignity Health, also known as Helping Hands of Henderson, correct?
Okay.
And then if I can just do one more clarification, it was for the first question in regards to the cost per ride. So I want to clarify the cost per ride for these programs are so low because we don't pay their whole operating cost of their agency and all of that. So we only pay for, a half of a portion of their transportation budget. And with many of these organizations, they have volunteer drivers. Some don't, some actually employ drivers, but there's volunteer drivers. And so that is largely how the cost per ride is so different than what we see from our paratransit contractor, which has hundreds of drivers, operating costs, and all that kind of good stuff. So the services are vastly different. Very important, but different.
Thank you, Antoinette, for the additional information.
Thank you.
Anything else for Antoinette or Karen? All right. Well, Karen, thank you for the presentation, and Antoinette, thank you for the additional information. You guys were a good tag team.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Dan Howland for the record. Just want to, as I stated earlier in the meeting about public comment for the CMP program, and wanted to just check with Reagan if we received any public comments that could be read for the CMP. Reagan?
Thank you, Dan. Reagan Lively again for the record. There are no public comments that have been received through email. I will now turn it over to Sue Christensen to read any comments received via the YouTube stream.
Thank you, Reagan. Sue Christiansen, Engagement and Media Supervisor for the record. There are no public comments through YouTube at this time.
Okay, thank you, Reagan and Sue. And Dan for bringing that up again. I appreciate that. All right, we are at number 10, item number 10, which is a presentation on the proposed transit service changes. And that will be given by Nathan Greenberg, and there are lots of them. So Nathan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Nathan Goldberg, Manager of Transit Planning for the record. I will get right into the transit service changes that we are here to update you on. The August 8th date that you see on the screen there is our implementation date for those service changes. So let's talk a little bit about what we have going on and how we got there. Next slide, please. So our strategy is based off of a variety of things. Of course, funding is central to a lot of that. The RTC has received approximately $303 million in federal aid through various CARES Act and other stimulus packages. during the pandemic to dedicate to transit and paratransit services. The proposed service changes are also all items that come straight from the onboard long-range mobility plan, and they focus on connectivity, access, and equity. These changes will connect with 185,000 residents who previously did not have access to transit service and offer them access to the transit network, employment opportunities, schools, and other essential services. And these also provide more equitable service across the valley. Next slide, please. Building off of those and kind of discussing the four pillars here that we are looking at, we have, in terms of access, we are introducing 2 new routes and extending several other routes that will introduce basic fixed route transit access to those that are currently unserved but need it, including over 10,000 people in poverty. We also have efficiencies built in through an innovative pilot that will provide an on-demand service as a paratransit fixed route hybrid in an expanded service area of the Southwest, in the Southwest Mountains Edge, West Henderson, and Enterprise areas. This will help us to reduce the cost per passenger of our traditional paratransit model and improve access to transit. We also have our first transit lab initiative, which is an innovative approach to providing faster service and more frequent service along one of our busiest corridors, Route 206 Charleston. That is one of the slowest, presently one of the slowest routes around, averaging between 8 and 9 miles an hour. We are anticipating that these changes will help us increase that speed by up to 25% and offer 50% more frequency in the core area of that route, which is between Nellis and Rainbow. In terms of equitability, we are demonstrating a commitment to that through restoring weekend services on 2 routes. Those are routes 207 Alta Stewart and routes 209 Vegas Owens. Those were rolled back during the pandemic to roll back the weekend service and have it just be weekday services. We are restoring that. In addition, we are enhancing weekend frequencies on routes 210 Lake Mead, 203, which is Spring Mountain, DI, and Lamb, and also on Route 119 Simmons Koval. Next slide, please. Here's kind of an overall map of everything that we'll be discussing. We'll get into each area in a little bit more detail as we go through the presentation, but this is kind of an overall best picture of it. So what you're looking at here, we have the red lines are either the new routes or the extensions. You have a full east-west valley route on Ann and Tropical alignment. We also have something similar in the south along the Cactus Horizon Ridge alignment and then continuing on to Boulder City. Then there are extensions to multiple routes as well, most notably in the southwest and then again in the northwest, which are 2 of the fastest growing areas in the valley. The blue lines that you see are the routes that will feature the weekend frequency enhancements and equity enhancements. The purple line is, of course, Route 206 Charleston, which will have the transit lab. And the pink areas are the extensions to the proposed paratransit service area with the traditional paratransit service. The red dots are the known clients that are being added to this through this process. And then finally, down in the southwest, kind of in the key lime or off green color there, we have the microtransit zone, which I will get into in more detail in a future slide here. So next slide, please. So what we're looking at here in terms of the demographics and cost, we have some rather impressive numbers here that you can see on the screen in terms of what we're providing in access and equity and opportunity. With the 185,000 additional residents who did not have that access, 21,000 currently at or below the poverty level, 18,000 senior citizens, 13,000 with a disability, 79,000 who are non-white or Hispanic. Of course, we have those additional 380 eligible paratransit customers. And then what are what are those individuals getting? Well, they're getting, along with, of course, our current customers, they are getting access to 23,000 plus employment opportunities. Over 7,000 people in this, of that 185,000 who did not have access but now do, 7,000 of those are resort corridor employees who could now feasibly use transit to commute to the resort corridor. We have access to 43 new child care facilities and schools, 6 grocery stores, and of course other facilities along the way. All of this is at an additional cost of about $6.9 million. That is, of course, over and above what we were already putting out there. This brings us to within about 3 to 4% of pre-COVID level services. So we're still not up to 100% of where we were, but we're getting really close. And we did that, of course, through reallocating a lot of resources. Certain things that were adjusted during the pandemic have been reallocated into these areas to help us provide access to all of these residents of the community. Next slide, please. So in the next few slides here, we'll go over in detail each area. This is the southwest area, looking at the Mountain's Edge, primarily the Mountain's Edge and South Enterprise areas. We have extensions to the Rainbow Route, Jones, also the 121 and 122 on Durango and Fort Apache to bring ourselves down or past Blue Diamond. And then, of course, there's the new Route 221 that is traversing the valley, starting over at Blue Diamond and Fort Apache and working its way over on Cactus and heading on eastward throughout Henderson. This area has, as we see on the screen, 70,000, almost 70,000 residents, well over 10,000 employment opportunities, an impressive number here, 4,000 resort corridor employees that call the Southwest home, 13 new child care facilities and schools, as well as 4 grocery stores. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about the proposed microtransit pilot. This is something we were really excited about. We believe it to be the first of its kind, in that it will partner up fixed route and paratransit clients on the same service. So the idea here is that, look, this is still a large area, and while this is great new service to this area, there are still large gaps where it may not be feasible to walk to one of those fixed route bus stops. Think of this as an introduction into the area, not the finished product. So one way to close that gap is to offer a service such as a microtransit to help people out and make using transit feasible. So how this would work is, if you are a fixed route client, you are able to use your smartphone to book a ride on this service, and it will take you either anywhere within that green zone, or it will connect you with a transit line within that zone as well, and then you can continue your journey outside of that zone on the fixed route services. However, if you are a paratransit client, you can, of course, get the same services that you would get now in terms of that curb-to-curb or door-to-door style service. The difference here being that you may share a ride with another person. Think of it like almost like a kind of an Uber pool type situation. So if I, for example, live at kind of the south end of Buffalo there, beyond Cactus, I may be booking a ride to get to the bus stop at Blue Diamond in Decatur because I want to continue on my journey up Decatur, and I'm going to use Route 103 to do that. In the meantime, we may stop and pick up paratransit clients, say one of the individuals that is those red dots at on Decatur. We may pick them up along the way, and then we will share that ride to that bus stop. I will get off, continue on my journey on fixed route, and the paratransit client will continue on to whatever their final destination was. So I hope that gets into a little bit more detail about what these services are. Be happy to take questions about that at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. Here's here's the detailed shot of West Henderson. We have Route 221 traversing across the top of the screen there along the cactus alignment, and then cutting its way over to Horizon Ridge. What you see there is the circle through the West Henderson area is going to be the new, kind of the new end of the Route 122. Currently, Route 122 makes a left on St. Rose and then continues on Horizon Ridge over to the Green Valley Ranch area. It no longer needs to do that since Route 221 will be handling that. And so we are able to reallocate those resources to provide services to the 20,000 residents, the well over 2,800 employment opportunities there are. Since this data was provided, there are certainly more and more warehouses and factories and jobs and things that have popped up along this area. Certainly they're again a growing area of the community, and this will provide service to it. Next slide, please. Again, Route 221 continues on its journey across the valley. This is the Green Valley portion. You can see that that peninsula, kind of along Valle Verde, gets filled in with this service. Next slide. Moving up to the far northwest portion of the valley, another extremely fast-growing area. Look at those numbers with over 30,000 residents, multiple employment opportunities, resort corridor employees, of course, several hundred of those, along with 10 child care facilities and schools and 2 grocery stores. What you see here is the top one there is an extension to the CX that will now terminate up at the Smith's Marketplace. And then the other piece of that is the end of the Route 220, which primarily runs east-west on the valley on the Tropical alignment, but then it will extend over on Wallapai up there again, ending at that Smith's Marketplace. Next slide, please. Here's the opposite end of that route, Route 220 and Tropical, which will be which ends all the way over at the truck stop near the Speedway, Las Vegas Motor Speedway. In between, it picks up a lot of high-density residential, and there again, thousands of employment opportunities. This is where a lot of the Amazon warehouses are, the Fanatics, the Honest Company. Many of those warehouses are along kind of that Lamb Tropical area, and then continuing on over toward the Speedway. So we have over 11,000 residents, as I said, several thousand employment opportunities, many resort corridor employees, and 6 new child care facilities and schools. Next slide, please. So this is the north end of Route 103 Decatur. If you think back to one of the first slides we looked at, there was also an extension of Decatur to the south, all the way towards Blue Diamond. But in doing that extension, there's more time built in terms of the needs of how many buses you have on the route, which afforded us the ability to also extend this route to the north a little bit. We'll be extending from the current terminus at Deer Springs all the way up to Grand Teton, and it makes a loop around on Jones and then comes back. This gets us one of the most requested things that we've had for the last several years is that we've ended up about a mile short of the DMV that's up there at Elkhorn. And so this allows us to service that facility, as well as there, again, many high-density residential units, especially along that Decatur, Elkhorn, and extending up to Grand Teton area, with 16,000 residents, over 800 employment opportunities, a couple hundred resort corridor employees, and then 5 new child care facilities and schools. Next slide, please. Okay, kind of shifting gears here a little bit. This is a snapshot of the urban core, as we talked about earlier. This is where many of the frequency enhancements are taking place, along with our transit lab on Route 206 Charleston. So we have I guess the one geographical change that I will note here too is to Route 119, which is Simmons Koval. That is going to come off of the freeway between kind of the Spring Mountain and Sahara alignments, and it will move over to Sammy Davis. That allows it access to the back end of the new Resorts World complex, as well as Circus and some others. So that'll be helpful to the resort corridor employees. And as you can see, there's over 9,000 of those that are impacted in this overall area. Focusing a little bit on that transit lab experience, if you can go back, please. I'd just like to talk about the transit lab on Charleston a little bit, which is essentially what we'll have is from 6 to 6 on weekdays, you will have kind of two different things. You'll have, we're looking at that from Nellis to Rainbow, you will have 10-minute service rather than the 15-minute services that you have now. But you have one service that is kind of every stop, and then you have another that is more of an express, well, express is probably the wrong word to use here, but an overlay type service where it's more limited stops. So we looked at the busiest bus stops along the corridor or the busiest transfer points, and it will stop at those, but it will not stop at every single stop in between. So depending upon what your needs are, that will depend upon which type of trip or which experience you would want to choose. To many people, it may not matter. It will just be the next bus that comes along. And that's the one that you're going to want to take. But if you do need to get all the way to the end or to a specific stop and have a closer walking distance, you'll want to make sure that you're on the proper one. So more to come on that as well. Next slide, please. Timeline-wise, 45-day public comment period. That's what we're nearing the end of right now. It's 26 today. Public comment period comes to an end on May 31st. It's a very quick turnaround then for board approval on June 10th, and then we are looking at implementation on August 8th. Next slide, please. During this public comment period, we have been out and about, to say the least. So we have literally been at hundreds of events throughout the community, touching base with as many people as possible. We wanted to connect with them and educate them on what our thoughts were. We wanted to listen and learn from them as well. We certainly have made some alterations based on what we heard from the community. Our goal was around 5,000 survey responses. We have exceeded that, I'm happy to say. So that has worked very well. And with that concludes my comments, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions for Nathan?
Yes,
There's a lot of stuff going on. Yes, Raymond.
Raymond Fletcher for the record. Nathan, are you going to reinstitute that CX stop owned by Fashion Show Mall, or because that used to pick up people going to the airport?
CX is going to stay as currently designed at the moment. I'm not sure what the future holds for the CX in terms of any redesigns we may do down the road, but yes, in the core of that route, it will remain as it is right now.
That's disappointing. Another question. I didn't hear you mention it. I know you were talking about Charleston running every about 10 minutes. Is it going to cut out going around that medical corridor on some runs that it makes? Or is it still going to continue service throughout that medical corridor to the BTC and then back on route?
Yeah, the routing through the medical district will remain the same in terms of exactly which stops are served by each one. One of them will serve every stop, and then the other one will have probably one stop in that area.
Madam Chair, please forgive me. Another one for you, Nathan. I know oftentimes the 103 Decatur wheelchair securements are often full of when it travels coming from the MTC. A couple questions about that. With that new routing, is it still going to service the MTC before it continues south? And with the potential for more individuals in mobility devices, are we looking at changing up the type of buses that run along the Decatur route, or how are we going to address the increase in PWDs, people in mobility devices along that route?
Sure. Yes, we are still servicing the MTC. In terms of the capacity of the wheelchairs along that route, yeah, I will have to get back with you on exactly which vehicles are going to be used for which runs. But that is something that we evaluate on an annual basis and based on capacity that we see per trip, and we make those determinations from there.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Nathan? Okay, well, very nice presentation, Nathan. I've been reading about it and evaluating it, but this was really helpful. So thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Item number 11 is to discuss topics of interest to the members of this committee, and Dan Howland will kind of lead us in this process. So Dan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dan Howland, Director of Paratransit and Specialized Services, for the record. And before I afford the opportunity for committee members to share anything with their other committee members, I'd like to follow up on some items that came up at the last meeting in March. And I did hear from Mr. Hyde, Dan Hyde, Vice Chair, and he did not have a question for Robert Palumbo's CRTT presentation. He just wanted to commend the RTC and the safety team with such a fantastic program. And we certainly appreciate that from Vice Chair Dan Hyde, so thank you. Moving on to the last meeting in March and follow-up items, one of the items was from Mr. Raymond Fletcher, and he asked what are the efforts being made to educate operators on, and he meant bus operators, on CDC requirements regarding face coverings. Mr. Fletcher himself is exempt due to disability, but feels that he was harassed when using public transportation. So that, and he asked the question so that people with disabilities are not put on the spot or in a difficult position. I did work with our fixed route team, and I did meet with Mr. Fletcher, and I just wanted to say how much I appreciated Raymond providing me with perspective that not only that he's experienced on fixed route, but just in general throughout the community and at stores he's frequented. And it certainly galvanized my path to continuing the need for people to utilize the face coverings and sharing that with our fixed route contractors. And I did speak with the RTC fixed route management team, and they obviously are aware of the ongoing enforcement of face coverings and the nuances that go along with that. I did share with Mr. Fletcher that ongoing efforts from our contractors and the RTC with respect to signage. So in regards to signage, a revised no mask, no ride decals and rider alerts state that customers with ADA defined conditions are excluded. Safety meetings are being held regularly by our contractors, and they're educating operators on the face covering requirement, as well as the ADA exemptions. This obviously ebbs and flows with respect to face coverings. You know, everybody during the pandemic leading up to the vaccinations, concerns were high as far as folks that weren't wearing face coverings. And then you've got individuals who are exempt, as discussed a moment ago. And now we see things going where a lot of vaccinations have been done, fortunately, and things are opening up, especially with June 1st on the horizon. So the RTC is doing its best to keep up with the federal mandate and enforce appropriately the Federal Transit Administration's mandate, the FTA's mandate for face coverings on public transit. That has not changed, and we'll continue to have our contractors educate our drivers, their drivers, as well as keep our signage and communications up to date as the situation changes. So I want to thank Mr. Fletcher for bringing that to our attention. The other item that was brought up was by Ms. Bethel Logan, and she asked the question, were there any hate crimes on the service? And at that time, our safety and security department at the RTC stated there were no identifiable hate crimes, nothing identified as a hate crime on the service. And Mr. Robert Palumbo, who gave the presentation earlier on CRTT, has confirmed that is still the case. There have been no identified hate crimes on the service. And I appreciate committee member Bethel Logan bringing that up and asking that question. The other question brought up by Mr. Havander Davis on the committee was that he was receiving complaints from some members regarding, actually paratransit clients, regarding scheduling trips. And specifically, when it is time for the bus to arrive, the driver has a different time than what was provided to the customers, and asked that we could look into this. I can state that I had asked our paratransit contractor, MV Transportation, to reach out to Mr. Havander Davis to get specifics to investigate. There was one situation that was looked into that was brought up by Mr. Davis with the contractor's dispatch manager, Hector Perez, and my understanding is they worked through that situation. And thank to Mr. Davis for bringing that up, and thanks to MV Contractor for working that through. I'll just say that from time to time, when you're dealing with the amount of rides that we're dealing with, and certainly our demand is going up between booking reservations, scheduling the trips, and actually performing those trips the day of service, things do happen, and we work diligently to correct any errors. But for the most part, on-time performance is excellent, and we continue to serve the paratransit population here in Vegas with a high level of accurate trips. And the last item, so thank you to Mr. Davis for bringing that up. And then the last item was brought up by Mr. Fletcher, and he asked about us installing a crosswalk button at the walkway by the Cashman Middle School that students use. This type of request is outside the jurisdiction of the RTC, but what we did was we talked to our engineering department, who provided us with some municipality contacts in that area for Mr. Fletcher to reach out to, and that information was provided to Mr. Fletcher. So we thank him for bringing that up. And with that, I want to thank everybody for the questions and all those who helped with the follow-up here at the RTC and our contractor. And I'd like to ask if there's any committee members that would like to share anything at this time, any topics of interest they'd like to share.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Raymond.
First, I want to thank you, Dan, so much for your diligence in looking into the situation related to the maps and getting back to me and the committee on it. As many of you know, as individuals with disabilities, it already takes a lot of strength and courage just to get out and deal with day-to-day life of the public without having to deal with the unfortunate harassment of others just because they don't know what your disability is, or you may not be able to see or comprehend one's disability. So thank you so much, Dan, for looking into that. I just have one question this month. I know I'm always full of questions. Please forgive me on that. But my question is related to seatbelts. On the 6th route, Well, first, both on fixed route and on paratransit, mobility devices are secured to the floor. On fixed route, you have the right to decline wearing a shoulder and lap belt. Does that right exist on paratransit as well, and why or why not? That is my question of the month. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Raymond.
Thank you, Raymond. Dan Howland, Director of Paratransit for the record. So we typically, obviously, when you're securing somebody on paratransit, you want them to be fully secured. And we do our utmost to do that. If there's issues with someone that doesn't want to be secured with the shoulder strap, the direction for the drivers is to call that in to dispatch for road supervisor to be dispatched to the scene, just to work with that, because we don't want an unsafe situation. But what we don't do is we can't force people to wear seatbelts, and then you're talking about wheelchair securement. So what I will do is I think that's a great idea for a presentation, and just for further clarification for the committee members, I will have the appropriate person do a presentation on securements on both those vehicles. So thank you, Raymond.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments from the committee members, topics of interest?
Madam Chair, this is Chuck Newboner.
Yes, Chuck.
I'd just like to share a quick word of gratitude to the RTC team, specifically Dan Hallen, Antoinette Braddock, and Kenny Rodriguez for their constant efforts at communication. Most recently, witnessing the stakeholder communication they participate in. It's been sharing not just COVID mitigation efforts and new approaches to disinfecting, but all of the updates that we've been privileged to hear today. So I just congratulate them on their efforts to be accessible and to communicate openly with the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Well said, and they're definitely doing a great job.
Thank you, Chuck.
Anyone else? This is your chance. Okay, well, thank you very much, Dan, for the updates that you gave and for allowing us to have this time to ask questions. We appreciate that. And we will go on now to the last item, item number 12, which is the second session of community participation. And this is an opportunity for individuals to talk about anything having to do with transportation or the RTC. And the same rules are that comments would have been emailed or posted on the website or contact made through this YouTube presentation. So I'll ask Reagan, are there any comments that have come in any way through one of those venues?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Reagan Lively again for the record. There are no public comments that have been submitted through email at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Then the last thing I'd like to say is it looks like, and my fingers are crossed, it looks like our July meeting will be in person. And so we'll all be able to see one another, and maybe even name tags will be helpful. But anyhow, it's been a long year and a half of the virtual meetings, but I commend RTC and particularly Reagan for just keeping us on track, having good presentations. Everything has gone really well. And thanks to each one of you for being so participatory and just being here for the meetings. It's been wonderful. So if there are no further comments, and I'll give you one more chance. Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you, Raymond. We stand adjourned. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Oh, you know that goes next door, right? It's locked.